Prawn here with some tips and tricks from Medieval Dynasty to help you survive longer through the seasons, to manage your villages, to be more productive and get more stuff done, as well as the things that I've learned that are really useful, including stupid stuff like not falling over tables. And I've got plenty of tips here to help with the building management of your village, the management of people, and the management of your animals, for example, because you do get to a point where you get a lot of animals and they can be useful in various different ways. So it is worth getting them because you can create manure that can be then used to fertilize the fields. And you can also get donkeys that will help you traverse the map a lot quicker, and they're a lot of fun as well. The first tip I want to start with is building management upgrades. So you may well know that as you've gone through the creation of your village, you can then unlock various different buildings. You can see a few of them here. But did you know that you can actually upgrade the buildings? So you might find that when you go through, you're unlocking various different buildings. You can see you can go into production, for example, and I've got Smithy 1 and Smithy 2 here. But did you know that Smithy 2 is actually an upgrade to Smithy 1? So although you can build separate buildings, you can actually use Smithy 2 and then just upgrade your original Smithy building. And this is actually preferable because Smithy 2 is an upgrade in that it'll let you have 2 workers in it. The building is also upgraded, a slightly different looking building, for example. But also it doesn't necessarily pay to have multiple buildings of the same type because you are paying tax on those buildings. So that can be problematic and can cause you issues in terms of how much money you're going to have to pay out. And obviously you're limited to the number of buildings you can build anyway. Now, the second version of a building will require slightly different things in order to build it. You can see that I need logs and planks for this one, whereas before there was a lot of sticks involved. So you may well need to use a woodshed. A woodshed is a very important building, by the way. Usually I'd set up the woodshed so the workers in it are collecting logs and making firewood as a minimum. If you can, you may want to get them to make some planks as well, although logs and firewood are more important for maintaining the village and keeping all the villagers happy. But you can see that Smithy 2 requires planks in order to craft the roof of the building to make sure that it is nicely set up. You may then have to use the woodshed to then turn logs into planks yourself if you're not getting the workers to do it, because you can't craft it without. Obviously, logs are easy to acquire because you can chop down trees to get them. But getting planks is a little bit more tricky because you do need a building in order to do it. Now, if you do the upgrade, you will notice that it does take the worker out of the building. So the worker that you had assigned to that building originally will be kicked out. You have to reassign them to that building and get them back in there. And obviously, you need to make sure they've got the tools that they require to do their job. But that you should find that if you go back into the management menu, that they're still working on what they were working on before. Now, these upgrades obviously work across a number of different buildings, and you will unlock more as you go through, which is nice. And it is worth working on and doing these upgrades, especially for something like the kitchen, where you can get more people making food so the villagers have got more to eat. And obviously the workshop is beneficial. If you have trouble working out which building is the one because you've got too many, you can just get the building upgrade out there, and then you can find it by just walking around with the red sort of highlighted area until it turns the right color. You'll also see from that list, you can see just how many different buildings you've got. Now, if you're smashing your way through the wooden planks, you can then obviously head over to the woodshed. As I said, you can ask the person that's working there to budge a bit, and then you can craft your own planks from there. You can also drag it and craft multiples, and it is worth doing this because you will unlock experience points, obviously, for crafting things yourself as well. Now, with the woodshed, I've already mentioned, this is one of the most important buildings, I think. You get them to make logs and to get firewood. So if you give them an axe, they'll go and chop down trees and they'll bring logs back. If you then set them to also cut firewood, that'll be really useful because it'll ensure the villagers have got firewood for their house, which, as you'll find, can be a pain when you first start the game because you'll build them a house and they'll need firewood. So set a couple of workers into woodshed 2 and do that. But you will notice that the buildings also have tax on them, and that tax soon stacks up. When it comes to making money so that you can pay your taxes and also just buy other things for your character and improve your life in Medieval Dynasty, I found one of the best ways to do it is to get your villagers to craft stuff for you that you can then sell. More on this later on because market stalls become very useful as well later in the game. But also, I found that you can sell your wares pretty easily to local villages. and make a good profit. Now I'm using bronze axes here as a demonstration of what you can do, because I found crafting bronze axes is pretty easy with the right amount of knowledge. So a smithy is very helpful for crafting bronze axes, and you can either do it yourself or you can get your workers to do it by getting stuff from the mines. Then you go to a nearby village, sell all your axes to everybody in that village, basically taking all their money. Then head outside to the wagoner nearby and use that fast travel ability to go to the next nearby village, and then repeat this process, just rinsing all the villages of their money. Now it's worth noting that you do have to unfortunately wait for the next season to get their money regenerated again, so you may find that a bit tricky. I certainly did. If you're trying to get loads of money, you're obviously going to have this problem, because you have a limited amount of money for each of these people of what they can actually give you if you're selling stuff to them, so you have to sort of buy and trade back. Now mines are the key to this. There are a number of mine locations, and I'll show you where there are in a second if you don't know already, where you can mine for tin, copper and iron, and you can do this either by going into the mines with a pickaxe yourself and manually mining the deposits in there and then waiting for them to respawn and repeating that process, or you can build a mine. Now this is again a later building that you'll get unlocked in the tree, so it takes some time to get to, but it is definitely worth doing. Otherwise I'd recommend manually going to the mines yourself and getting as much of that ore as you can, because it does allow you to craft more expensive items. Now these mine locations can obviously be filled with people, and you can see that you can put a lot of workers in there, and I'd recommend getting as many in the mines as you can. Then you need a pickaxe in order to do it, but then you can see you can get stone, salt, copper and tin and iron. Now I generally don't bother with stone or salt. Copper and tin ore and iron ore are the ones to go for. So set them at the right quantity so they're basically maximizing the amount that they're pulling out of there. And it seems like it's not a problem in terms of how much they can extract, because they just keep going. And you do, however, need to make sure they've got a lot of pickaxes. The problem I've found with this is that they burn through the pickaxes pretty easily, especially the more people you've got working in there. Obviously the return's pretty good because you get a lot of copper and tin and iron out of it that you can then use to craft various different weapons that you can then sell to the nearby villages to make more money, but you do need to make sure they're well stocked up on pickaxes. So I actually equip them with bronze pickaxes wherever I can, or fancier, because they'll last longer. What I have found is when you go into the management section, you'll often find there's a little icon nagging you under the status that I don't have any tools in their box. So you have to go to each individual mine and put the tools into the box so that they then have the equipment that they need to do their job. Unfortunately, I've not found an easier way around this, and the mines are spread out throughout the map. So that is one downside, in that you have to visit them each individually. Now, obviously, you could use stone pickaxes because they're a lot easier to craft. You can do that by hand when you're out and about, so it's really easy to do that. However, obviously, stone pickaxes don't have the same durability. They don't last as long, so it is worth crafting fancier ones if you can. Or if you are going to use stone pickaxes, make sure you use an absolute bucket load of them and leave them in each of the mines, because that will ensure that they last longer and you're not constantly going back and forth trying to make sure that the miners have got what they need for this. Now, the mine locations are handily marked on this map for you, as I am demonstrating here. You can see there are multiple mine locations. Now I have marked the ones where you can actually put a mine in yourself, so where you can craft that building inside the mine. You can see there is actually another spot which is down by Sakauki. You'll probably visited that if you've gone to that village. You can't build a mine in there yourself. You can only mine it manually. But you can see you've got multiple spots here around the map that you can go to. They are quite spread out depending on where you've put your village, but it is worth doing. The villagers will travel to the mines themselves, collect the stuff, and then come back to your village to sleep, obviously. And they will deposit the things in the box, but they'll also take the stuff back to your resources shed. A resources shed is a really important building in the management of your village, so I want to get into that now. When you've done enough quests and you've earned yourself some dynasty reputation, which you can see on the management tabs, I've got 16,711 dynasty reputation at the minute. That means you can then go to these little camps nearby and get people to go into your village. You probably know that already. Once you do this, you'll see that you then go into the management section and you'll find the person appears. They're pretty sad because they've got nowhere to live. they've got no food, they've got no water, and they've got no wood. So they need firewood, they need water, they need food, and they need a house. So first of all, we're going to assign them a house, which fortunately there are plenty of currently built in my village. So you can just assign them a house. And then we should find that they automatically get water. I'm going to show you what I mean in a second. And then I'm going to assign them a job as well. So they've got something to do. We're going to put them in with the animals for now. And now you can see they've got a job and their happiness is going up a bit. They've got somewhere to live and they also aren't complaining about food and water. But I'll show you why in a second. So when you first get some villagers into your village, you will find that you have to visit their house. So there's a house here, for example, and they'll require food, water, and some firewood. So what you need to do, generally speaking, is you get a bucket of water, you put it in there. You find your firewood, you put some in there as well, and then you get them some food as well. For example, roasted meat, which is one of the easiest things to do. This is usually what you have to do to make sure a villager's happy and maintain it, obviously a bit more than one. Ways to make this easier. First of all, there are several buildings I'd recommend constructing. The first of these is definitely going to be the hunting lodge. This makes life so much easier. So a hunting lodge. Mine is down here. This is a hunting lodge. If you go into the hunting lodge, you'll see there's a bunch of people in here. But if we go into the management of it, you can see that they only require a knife. That's all they're required to work. So you need to make sure you've got a knife as minimum in there. And I've got 68 knives in there at the moment just because they'll break. Once you've got villagers in there, assign them to get you some meat and dried meat. They'll also, I'd recommend getting some leather and fur and feathers because you can sell those, but you want to focus mainly on meat, and that is the main assignment that they should have. I'd recommend having that as a high percentage intensity, especially as you grow your village and you've got more and more people in there. Make sure they've got knives and make sure they're getting meat, basically, is the main requirement for this hunting lodge. To put a knife in, make sure they've got the knife, you open the box, you go in there, you put a knife in there. So they'll then be collecting the meat, which means that you don't have to, because otherwise you've got to go out and kill the creatures, then you need to cook the meat, which generally speaking you do inside the house by the fire, and then you need to give it to the villagers by putting it in their box. The next thing to build that will make that life easier is the kitchen. So you can see the kitchen here. This is kitchen 2, but kitchen 1 will do the same job. And in here, people cooking food. Now, as a basic, when you first get a kitchen, the first thing to do is to get them to make roasted meat. So you can see I've currently got them set to do flat-breaded onion and white bread, but you won't be able to do those initially. So earlier on, when your hunters have collected roasted meat, you want to assign the kitchen to basically make roasted meat as much as possible. So as when the raw meat comes in, the kitchen will then cook the roasted meat, and that will ensure that there's a good amount of roasted meat in production so that the villagers are then fed. Now again, generally you'd have to then take that roasted meat from the box, which would probably end up in here, and deliver it to the villagers. It's a pain, they don't seem to come collect it very easily, but there's a solution to that as well. So this is multi-step process. As you can see, you go over here and you craft this food storage building. So you can see food storage. Now food storage doesn't require any maintenance, there's no people in here, but what happens is any food that comes in will get put in here. So if you put food in here yourself that you found, so you can see I put loads of random things in here like cherry, cabbage, eggs and things like that. Anything harvested from the field will end up in here. So we've got 1,841 cabbages because we've been just crafting those in the fields, but you can put your meat in here as well. So if you cook any meat, you can put it in here, then the villagers will come get it. That will save the system because then they'll come and get their meat themselves, which makes life a lot easier. Now I've already talked about the wood because the firewood is the other thing. So I mentioned earlier in the video that you get the wood shed, you get them to create the logs, so they would get the logs, they then make the firewood, and then that will hopefully get distributed to the villagers. Now initially it probably won't because it'll end up in here. So you can see we've got 253 firewood in here, we've got logs in here, and that means the villagers still don't get it. So you have to come in here, you have to collect the firewood, take it, put it in your inventory, then take it to the individual houses and put it in. The more villagers you've got, the more work you're going to have to do manually transporting that around. The solution to this is then the resources storage building. So resources storage, this is resource storage 2. but you can use resource storage 1 to start with. Resource storage is a massive building which really basically only uses this box, and it's quite silly in that way, but anything that's not food will end up in here, and that includes all sorts of things, including the copper hammers, for example, that I told you I was getting the smithy to work on, or any sort of copper tools or bronze axes that I mentioned earlier. Other things will end up in here as well, but what you'll find is that you should end up with logs in here too, and the firewood, and you can put stuff that you found in there that you want to then end up in the villager's possession. So you can put your firewood in here, for example. We can put a load of firewood in here, and now what will happen is the villagers will come collect their firewood from here. So that solves those problems with the food and the firewood. The other problem you're going to have to deal with is the water. So for water, it's pretty easy for yourself because you can just head down here, run over. I mean, if you crafted your village by the water, and if you haven't, then that was silly. Because you can just drink from a river, for example, and there you go. Now that's my water sorted out. But if you want to maintain the village's water, you can't tell them to go and drink from a river. You need a well. So here we have a well, and in said well is some buckets. So, and there's a lady crafting the water. So you can see here, same sort of logic. We can go to the well board. You've got a person assigned to it. You can then set them to get buckets of water. So they need buckets first. So you need to go to the barrel. You deposit your buckets in there. So we find some buckets. We put them in the well, and then she will get it for you. If you haven't got a person to work on it, that's fine. You can just free it up and you can do it yourself. So we press craft, you go to buckets, press R to do more buckets, and then you get loads of buckets. Now, obviously you can then get buckets of water out of the well, and that's ideal because then we then have more buckets. I'm not going to do them all just now, but then what you do then is you run over here and you take them over to the food storage. So in the food storage, we go in here, and then you can see there's empty buckets in here, so you might need to take those out. But if we scroll down, we'll find that I've got buckets of water now. I've got 3 buckets of water. I can put them in there, and now the villagers all have water. So there's a lot of things that you can do, buildings that you can make that will make it easier so you don't have to do that. So now I've got it optimized so that I don't need to worry about water, meat, or firewood for any of the villagers. And in the theory, as long as nothing happens, like the buckets all break, or the knives break in the hunter's lodge, or the axe breaks in the woodshed, that should maintain itself. I'd recommend putting loads of wood axes in the wood hut and loads of knives in the hunter's lodge, and that will then help. The top left corner, you'll see there's an indicator which tells me I don't have any animal feed at the moment for 4 of my animals. But also, if we go into management, which I recommend doing regularly, and this will become more and more bothersome as you grow your village, because there'll be a lot of things that need micromanaging. But you'll see you'll have indicators here. So you've got status indicators. So the little red person shows there's nobody in the shed. So there's nobody in there, nothing's happening. That's obvious. This one, you can see this excavation shed has a hammer symbol next to it. If you go into it, it then tells you there's no tool. And in the tools, they need a pickaxe and a shovel because they are trying to get clay out. So for clay. Now, if you click on the excavation shed, you'll see it's highlighted on the map here, so you can get an idea of where it is in your village. I think it's over here. It's not that map. That map isn't perfect. So we're going to run down here. They're going to need the tools, and it's in this corner because they're set to get clay, and there are some clay locations you can go to yourself. Yep, this is the right one. So we need to put in a pickaxe and a shovel. Yeah, they haven't got either of those, so we go in here, and hopefully I've got those tools on me. Pickaxe. Shovel, they can just have those for now. That should, you might need more. I'd recommend putting more in, but you can see now it's fine. So you have to do this for each of these. So now I've got a mine that hasn't got any tools in it, which means I'm going to have to go and sort that out. I've got a wood shed with the same problem, which I definitely need to sort out, as I was just saying about that. And then other buildings. So with the mine in place, I showed you earlier on the smithy. If you go into the smithy, you can see that this smithy is set up to make copper bars which requires copper ore and a hammer, so they just need a hammer in there. And then they're going to make copper axes, which require logs, a hammer, and copper bars. So that's a pretty easy build if you want to start as a basic one. Now, obviously, the monetary value of these is going to vary. So I'll quickly show you that. If we go onto the anvil and you have a look at copper tools, you'll see that a copper axe, if you look down the bottom of the screen, is worth 260 in terms of the price. Now that isn't actually the money that you'll get for a copper axe when you sell it to a stall holder. You'll get less than that, but that is what the total money value is. If we go to bronze tools, they're obviously worth more. You can see that a bronze axe is worth 630. That requires bronze bars and logs, so it's a bit more complicated to do. You can obviously get the people to create those instead if you have the resources for that. So you just need tin bars, so we can turn this down and turn this down, and then we can turn the bronze bars up. Well, this is a bit trickier to do. You need to make sure you've got this unlocked. You can see currently you don't have any bronze bars, so they can't actually do this. I might have bronze bars though, let's find out. I don't, but what we can do is we can make them. So we'll just get him to budge out of the way. So you see bronze bars is made from these, so we'll just do this quickly.
I wish we could turn back time. I'd make you mine.
So now we've created bronze bars, we can put them in. What you will notice is there's a limit on how much you can put into here, so into the chest for the smithy. And you can go into obviously the resources shed instead and put it in there, but also there's a limit on that, so you can see there's a limit of 2,000 on that, so that's worth keeping in mind.
Alright then.
Once you've crafted a bunch of things or have got your villagers to make you a load of resources, you can then sell it at the market stalls. So rather than go into a village, you can actually craft your own. Now this takes some time before it's unlocked, it's worth noting, but it's in the services section. So in there you have market stalls and builder's hut. Market stall can be placed down. It requires linen, thread and other things. There's a bit of a mission to build. But once you do that, you can build these and then you can assign someone to it to sell things. You go into the market stall, obviously you can see we've got someone assigned to it, and then if you click as default, there's actually nothing on here, no goods to sell, which is weird, so you have to go down and change good types. So I'll show you on this one as a demo. Go in here, you can see there's nothing, it's not selling anything. You can go change good types by pressing C, and then you just click into tools, for example, and then you can see, obviously you can see how many of each of these things you've got. So tools would be a valid one to do, because I'm obviously going to have a lot of copper axes, or at least that's the plan. I'm going to have a lot of these at some point, and the bronze axes, so you can go in and do that. You can also have different ones, so we could change it. Let's say, I know we've got a bunch of resources, we've got 2,000 feathers, so we could set this to sell feathers. And what I found is it seems to make quite a bit of money this way. It seems to make more than you would if you went and sold it to the villagers instead, so for the specific villages. So when they make the money, that is then put into the resources storage, and then obviously you can then take it out to buy things or to pay your taxes or whatever else. So these are really handy and worth purchasing, but they do take some time to get to in the build tree. Now, if you've killed yourself a bandit, you might find that your arrows are stuck in them. And if you go to loot said bandit, you'll see that your arrow is not on them, so you actually have to pick it up manually. Worth bearing in mind. If it's a bit too dark or villagers have gone to sleep inconveniently, so you can't sell stuff to them, you can craft your own campfire, so you can sleep nearby a village without having to go home to your bed. You can do it here. You can see there's various different ones of doing it. I've got a wooden campfire here, for example. Plop that down. You'll need a torch in order to light it, but then once you do that, you can then just sleep by it and sleep until the next day. And then you can return into the village and talk to the traders again, because they'll be waking up from their slumber. If you're manually collecting logs yourself, here's a quick tip. Birch trees suck. They are not as good at giving you resources as other trees. So the white trees, birch trees, if you cut them down, you only get 3 logs out of them, which is disappointing. Whereas some of the other trees, like the maple trees, for example, will give you more. Maple trees will give 4 logs, generally speaking, so you get more out of them for your effort. They both take the same amount of effort to cut down as well, so it's definitely worth just avoiding the birch trees. Another tip is you'll see that you can dig up trees with a shovel, digging up the trunk. Apparently, if you leave that stump in the floor, they will regrow over time. And the tip also is obviously the fancier the axe, the better it is. Now, durability isn't necessarily amazing on any of the axes, but what you'll find is it requires less swings to chop down a tree with a bronze axe and an iron one than it does the others. The seasons in Medieval Dynasty are punishing. You'll often find you're dying in winter and too hot in the summer, and clothing can fix this and help with this problem. You can change into warm winter clothes, for example. You can buy hats or craft other warm fur hoods and things that you can wear that will keep you warm in winter. Also, equipping a torch will help and stop with those problems. But skills are also really beneficial. So if you've got survival skills, because you've been picking things off the ground, and you've done a lot of that, you'll get a survival skill. I'd recommend spending it on insensitive. Insensitive gives you better temperature tolerance, and this really helps because it means you don't have to spend as much money on clothes and you survive for longer, which is beneficial without your character complaining all the time. Another way to make money is just to steal things. Now, when another village is asleep, you can go around stealing stuff from the village, and you can probably get away with it and not lose too much dynasty reputation. But if you try and sell those things, sometimes you'll find you get a message saying they won't purchase them. What I've discovered is it's fine to steal from one village and then sell it to a different village. So rob a village as much as you want to, and then go to a different village during the daytime and then sell the stolen items there. You'll see that they're marked as different colours of red in your inventory, so that'll let you know which ones they won't buy and will, and also which ones are stolen, so you can get an idea there. But it is a good way to make extra money if you need to, aside from other things. If you're also looking to make money, the other thing I'd say is anything that you can craft into something better, that will make you more money. So a simple thing, for example, is if you shoot an animal, it gives you meat. You cook that meat, you'll get more money for roasted meat than you will for uncooked meat. If you take the leather and turn it into simple bags, you'll get more money for simple bags than you would for straight leather. If you do the upgraded bag version, so there's a bag instead of simple bag, that'll get you more money as well. And apply that logic to basically everything. Anything that starts off as a basic item, if you can just even craft it into something slightly fancier, you'll get more money for it. If you can craft loads of them, you'll get loads and loads more money for it. And then obviously if you can get your villagers to craft loads of them for you, then you don't have to do any work, and then you can make more profit. My final tip for just amusement purposes is, did you know there's an emote wheel? So you can press B and you can open up a load of emotes. So check this out as I do it with my friends, and then subscribe for more tips like this. Where's that under?
Just the fourth one. It's just I'm dead.
I'm dead.
Just gonna lie here for a minute. Take a load
Donkey, the pig just looked at you.
I could really do with a drink. I love you. Damn it! I'm thirsty.
Is that sign language? Ah,
Yes.
rock, parchment, scissors.
Oh, he's back.
You look lovely.
Oh, the donkey's into it.
Yes. Fight me, coward.
What are you guys doing with these donkeys?